IT Insights, InsurTalk. Interviews with insurance leaders about what matters to the industry.
Hi, I'm Eva Banaś. Welcome to another episode of IT Insights InsurTalk series by Future Processing. Innovation has been on everyone's lips for quite some time now, and it's no wonder looking how it can improve our daily life and also contribute to companies' growth in terms of money cost savings and time savings as well. Today, we will delve into innovation and the changes of mindset it requires to be implemented within the organizations and companies. My guest is Nic Sproul, the CCO of Isle of Claims, as well as the former director of Gallagher Bassett. Nic, great to have you here, and thank you for recommending this place, this private club, Homegrown.
You're welcome, and real honour. And we met recently in the lovely Barcelona as well.
We did, indeed. How did you like it, actually?
Very busy. Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the event, actually. I really did. And what made me smile is that as you walked around the sort of event, there were so many choices of food.
Yeah.
I mean, from sweets to hot dogs and anything in between. It was interesting, and I might touch on a few lessons actually through our chat.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do that. And looking at your experience in insurance, and generally, I know that there's quite a story behind your first career opportunity, how it started and ended quite quickly, actually. Could you share this one?
I can, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. So very, very quickly, as a very young child, I was always interested in innovation, always. And the first example of this, which leads into the story that I'm going to share with you, is I was fascinated with mechanical objects. And one day, aged 6, maybe 7, my father, at the time, I'm going back some years, bought a new hi-fi system. Never seen it before. This incredible system. And I was fascinated with how it worked. So, true story, after the first week, one evening, I got out of bed for some reason and started taking it apart because I wanted to understand
Yes.
how it worked. And that was a problem because I couldn't put it back together again, age 6. So just wanted to share that because fast forwards, that fascination with the engineering of stuff, be it innovation, we'll touch on what's the difference between innovation and technology, which I think is quite big. But fast forward to my first job, and having left school, the route I wanted to take was engineering, believe it or not. And I went to a technical college for 12 months, at which I was sponsored by at the time, an engineering organisation. And after 12 months, I then went to the engineering company's practice to work, and day one, got introduced to the owner managing director, and got shown around the facility, which was quite scary. Got shown back into the owner managing director's office, got given my uniform, and was asked to come back tomorrow having had my hair cut, which I know for anybody watching this, it's a bit funny, but I did have long hair back then, and I said no, because that doesn't define my ability as a future engineer and a future innovator, and I lost my job, literally. So walked out of a situation essentially without a career path. So, but with my principles intact, with what I believed, and interestingly, that particular engineering company didn't ultimately survive. And again, we can link that into what we're going to talk about, I think, regarding the insurance industry quite well.
So how did you actually end up in insurance? Because you've been doing that for quite some years now.
So following, so as a result of that example, I fortunately picked up my engineering training and qualified as a mechanical engineer. And then through always with the fascination of innovation, innovating stuff. I navigated towards the silicon chip industry, microelectronic industry, and managed to secure a job in 20 odd years ago in Silicon Valley. Through that engineering discipline innovation background, which was probably the making of the rest of my career, I'd say. So let me just bring that to life a little bit. So imagine you're in Silicon Valley at the height of the dot-com boom, of microchips driving everything, from the phones that we take for granted today, to the computational stuff, to medical, to everything. So I was right at the cusp of that, working in Fremont, California, albeit what we were working on was very, very nerdy. So we were working on metrology equipment, thin film metrology equipment, very nerdy, not going to go into detail, but a game changer, because without what we were working on, the future chips, silicon chips, wouldn't have been developed. And an example of that is that I worked with the team at Ericsson in Kista in Stockholm on the Bluetooth chip. And so we had some enabling technology. So all of that just gave me this huge fascination of the art of the possible. And that was an amazing career. I'll get to the question. It was an amazing career. Had some incredible highs, incredible lows, but overall an amazing career that came to an end. A huge amount of international travel that I needed to change. So I and the company that I was working for, Thermalwave, were acquired by another company. So I decided to have a career change, and I went into management consulting. My first client in management consulting was an insurance claims management company. So almost 17 years ago, I didn't know, all I knew about insurance was the products that I purchased. That was it. But what fascinated me is the opportunity to improve the way, the processes of that sector. It's a very long answer. I hope I've answered it.
You definitely did. And you mentioned this inquisitive mind you had when you put into pieces the hi-fi from that your dad brought in. Is it even possible to switch off this kind of mindset, this kind of inquisitive mind?
It's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and my kids also have a similar thing. So it's not easy, and I think lots of people, there are different labels for different types of people. And if you look at entrepreneurs and serial entrepreneurs, they're this category or that category. I don't really know, but what works for me is sport. So a bit like Forrest Gump, I run a lot, I train a lot, but more recently, if you're on Instagram, is arranging flowers.
Okay.
So Nic, the florist father, on Instagram. I haven't got many followers. I'm not that bothered. My daughter set it up, but I really enjoy flower arranging. And I think it's like anything. It's like anybody, isn't it? You look for things that relax you. Everybody's got a different type of thing. So the way I sort of conclude that is, if I'm using the creative part of my brain, I'm quite relaxed. If I'm using the analytical part, I'm not.
Okay. And getting back to your story where you had to cut, or you were supposed to cut your hair, but you decided not to stay true to yourself. It brings up the topic of diversity, actually, that could potentially fuel innovation.
Yeah.
How could leaders embrace it and actually cultivate, promote it to create inclusive environments, inclusive organizations, and drive innovation as a result?
There's a lot of research on this. And I think, as you know, I was very fortunate last year to share a stage with Richard Watson, futurologist, fascinating gentleman, and he really talks a lot about diversity, and the way he describes it much more intellectually than myself. That if you've got all of the same people trying to solve a problem, you're probably going to get the same solution of lots of people. If you've got lots of different people trying to solve a problem, you're probably going to get a much better outcome and a much better sort of collection of ideas. And that's where diversity is absolutely crucial. And I say there's lots of examples of this. And if you look at just in InsurTalk, as an example, InsurTalk claims tech, very diverse groups of people. So I'm a huge advocate of that. And in actual fact, I think here 2 weeks ago, hosted a diversity session with insurance industry people, just sharing sort of ideas on how we can be more diverse, really. But I do think that the insurance sector is doing okay. Certainly from my experience, certainly the big companies that I'm engaged with are trying to move the dial.
And you already mentioned this challenging of status quo, and I would also add looking beyond the immediate future, looking more ahead when it comes to implementing innovation. But what I wonder about is how to actually make sure that this kind of thinking is encouraged, is implemented in teams driving innovation. How do you see this one?
As we saw in Barcelona, you've got InsurTech companies that without innovation, they haven't got a business model. They're trying to disrupt the status quo, and to do that, they need to generate funding and bandwidth and enough runway to get to where they believe their product can get to. But I do think that we're looking at the next generation for real fundamental changes in terms of innovation within the insurance space. And some of that is, the risk-averse nature of people that work in insurance today, but also the fact that their priorities are very much driven by shareholder value. So, and that is very much it's results orientated, isn't it? It's next quarter, and I think this is certainly a problem in governments, but in terms
goes from the above,
it's whereas if you say, right, okay, just as an example, the next 8 quarters are not going to be where we would like them to be. The reasons for that are the investment that's going into the innovation that is needed for quarter 9 onwards to be amazing, and also for the customer engagement and delivery, etc., to be amazing. And I think to achieve that, it is a mindset change, and I think it's a generational change.
I think one more aspect here to be mentioned are learning things and actually trying to find another approach to old practices, staying open to actually doing those.
At ITC, there was behavioural scientist, and I can't remember his name, JP Morgan, just communicated with him this week, actually. I'm going to read his book. This is exactly what he talks about how to create open-mindedness in large institutions and organisations. And I think one of the ways that you can do that, going back to my first experience on the career path, let's just say the MD owner said, not a problem about your hair, or doesn't even mention it. Go in and transform that company, and they didn't end up going out of business, for example. I think that is the challenge for all sectors, but we're talking about insurance. It's to have those people that perhaps don't look the same as the square mile, etc. And it's definitely happening, but it probably needs to happen quicker, is what I'd say.
And regarding diversity and bringing different people in one room to actually bring in innovation, there's also this aspect of cross-functional interdisciplinary teams that, as Richard Watson, whom you already mentioned, actually deems are as crucial in bringing in innovation. I guess it also fits into the whole picture that you've just mentioned, right?
Yeah, very much so. And I think that, and that's why, startup scale-ups kind of make it look easy because they're in an incubator. How do you take that from that to a, huge organisation and try and drive that transformational change whilst running the business, and I think that certainly, just flicking into my real area of expertise is the claims part of insurance, and to a certain extent, it's the part that gets a bit overlooked. It's not distribution, it's not underwriting, it's a bit overlooked. I think that is changing because I think there's certainly for innovation, there's huge opportunity within the claims space, and guess what? They are responsible, accountable for by far the biggest number within an insurance company in terms of claims settlements, claims payments. I think there's significant innovation opportunity within that area, and it's really interesting. In almost 17 years, it feels like the time is coming for claims. It's getting a lot more attention, a lot more investment, whereas before it wasn't.
And in terms of this cross-functional interdisciplinary teams, have you got any advice, life hacks for the leaders, how to actually work on innovation, implement innovation via this kind of interdisciplinary teams, how to make it happen? Because you mentioned it is very, very difficult in those big organizations, and I definitely do agree. But how to actually do it?
So I'll give an example on this. It's not insurance; it's tech. And
I think the problem is quite universal, actually.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I'll paint the scene. I'm in the headquarters of Thermalwave in Fremont, California, and working on a lot of stuff. And there's an area, say it's this door here, and you had your your security access card. Didn't work on that door. True story, didn't work on it. And I would ask the question, why can't I access that door? Behind that door was called the Research and Development Lab, R&D. And they did not want any contact with anybody else in the business because they were R&D. They were developing, designing, moving forwards what they believed was right for the business. Okay, I managed by being a bit robust to be granted access through that door after quite a while. And this is relevant to the insurance industry. And the guy that was the gatekeeper was a guy called John Opsall, very, very intimidating guy. He said, and long story short, he said, right, okay, you can talk to my people. And I went in there and I said, well, what are you working on then? And why are you working on that? And it'd be this, and have you thought about this? So to your point, absolutely with any organisation, there should not be silos of groups, divisions working in silos on what they believe is right for the business. I think that the parts of insurers that are making the big decisions for the future plans of the business, so not the day-to-day, but the future plans of the business, have to engage with the wider organisation. Some do it really, really well. Some of the larger ones, it's much, much harder. And I don't know, bureaucracy, history, whatever that is. But the example would be that if you've got, call it the innovation lab, not talking to the rest of the business, then they might be innovating the wrong thing, first of all. And so the first thing I would do is that if the areas of the business, the insurance business or whatever the business that are working on future stuff must be engaged with the wider organisation. The problem that you have, certainly from my experience, is that the innovation lab feels that they know best. They're moving in the right direction because they know best. But it could be another department or individual that has got a really priceless piece of information that is one of the biggest challenges, whatever that could be, that they could accelerate through to a conclusion and through to a new product or service. So very long way to answer your question, but make sure that you've not got the future innovators within an organisation disconnected to the organisation. That's probably what I'd say.
Yeah, so I guess collaboration would be possibly one of the answers here.
Every presentation that I give, I overuse that word. Collaboration.
But it is crucial.
Yeah, collaboration, partnership, and it's like lots of things in life. If there's a huge challenge, if more people collaborate, it becomes a bit smaller because there's more collaboration within it, be it geopolitics or whatever that is. And within the insurance sector, and actually a link on that is collaboration with your suppliers. Insurers have spent a huge amount of money, invest a huge amount of money with suppliers on lots of different things. The good news is, I'm going to go for the good news, the level of collaboration today versus 17 years ago is better, much better, and it's absolutely changing.
And you also touched upon technology and innovation as two separate terms, but I would actually claim that embracing new technology is a way to actually drive innovation. And looking at that from that point of view, how could insurance leaders actually leverage using AI, IoT, blockchain, all this new tech that is out there to leverage their company's situation, to drive innovation?
So last year I moderated a panel, and it was the ethical use of AI in insurance. There's no doubt about it that AI will have an impact on all of our lives. But the ethical use was the topic that we covered. And this is why it's a generational thing, because if I don't know, look at my father, he wants to talk to a person that's going to reassure him that everything's going to be fine. And it was about 3 years ago, I did a presentation to one of the largest insurers in the UK. And they asked me to be controversial. So I did a presentation on digital twins. It's quite out there now, but back then it wasn't. And this was to a room of very traditional insurance claims professionals across the whole spectrum. And my first slide was a person and a digital version of the person. And I tried to sort of bring to life how the future generations will not deal with looking for an insurance product, dealing with a claim, buying it, etc. They'll have a version of them called a digital twin, and Richard Watson backs this up, much smarter than me, that will deal with all of that. So what you've then got is, in the future, if you look really into the future, you've got a digital version of you that in theory knows what you want, speaking to AI. And between them, they'll determine what insurance cover you, if we're talking insurance, what insurance cover you ultimately will buy. I can absolutely visualize that. The mundane stuff that you have to deal with, i.e. renew your insurance product for this, have a search, etc. That certainly in the next generation will be done as automatically using.
It'll be natural, probably.
Yeah. And it will just renew. It's a great thing about people like Richard Watson talking about the future, because nobody knows.
That's actually a very good way to finish our conversation today. Thank you, Nic, for all your insights, all your experiences you shared today with us.
I've enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Very much.
And thank you, our audience, for listening to yet another IT Insights InsurTalk episode by Future Processing. See you next time.
IT Insights talks on business and IT challenges with tech leaders. Visit us at itinsights.tech and dive into our podcasts, webinars, and events.